There's a stone list of Egyptian kings carved into a temple wall about 100 years after this story ends. Every pharaoh appears one after another, exactly where they're supposed to be. But then there's a gap. One king reigns, the next begins right on schedule, and an entire 25 years of Egyptian history simply isn't there. Not damaged, not lost, deliberately skipped as if it never happened. The missing king was Akhenaten, and erasing him became one of ancient Egypt's most successful campaigns of historical erasure for nearly 3,000 years. Around 1353 BCE, a young pharaoh named Amenhotep inherited one of the most powerful kingdoms in the ancient world. Egypt worshipped dozens of gods, but none was more influential than Amun, whose priests had grown enormously wealthy and politically powerful. Within just a few years, the new king turned that religious order upside down. He declared that the Aten, the radiant disk of the sun, stood above all other gods. To mark this transformation, he changed his own name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for Aten. His revolution didn't stop there. Akhenaten abandoned Thebes, Egypt's traditional religious capital, and ordered the construction of an entirely new city in the desert. He named it Akhetaten, known today as Amarna, and intended it to become the center of his new religious vision. At the same time, he launched a campaign against the old faith, sending workers across Egypt to chisel the name of Amun from temples, monuments, and royal inscriptions. The man history would eventually erase began his reign by trying to erase someone else's legacy first. When Akhenaten died around 1336 BCE, the backlash came quickly. His successors began restoring Egypt's traditional religion, but it was the general-turned-pharaoh Horemheb who ensured the Amarna experiment would be wiped from memory. Akhetaten was abandoned, its temples dismantled stone by stone. Yet instead of simply destroying them, Horemheb recycled the material. Thousands of carved limestone blocks were carried to Karnak and buried inside the cores of his own massive pylons and walls as ordinary building filler, hidden where no one was ever expected to see them again. The destruction wasn't limited to buildings. It extended to history itself. Official king lists carved decades later simply omitted Akhenaten and his immediate successors, jumping directly from his father to Horemheb as though the entire Amarna period had never existed. For the ancient Egyptians, this carried enormous spiritual significance. A person's name was believed to be an essential part of their existence, and as long as it was remembered, they could continue to live in the afterlife. Erasing a name wasn't just political revenge, it was intended to deny someone eternity itself. For thousands of years, the plan worked. Akhenaten became little more than a blank space in history. Then, during the 19th and 20th centuries, archaeologists began excavating the ruins of Amarna. Beneath the desert sands, they uncovered the remains of an entire royal capital, palaces, temples, homes, and streets, revealing a city that official Egyptian records had tried to pretend had never existed. The story takes one final, remarkable turn. One of the young kings whose name was also erased from the official king lists was Tutankhamun. Ironically, while his memory was targeted for erasure, his tomb escaped the widespread looting that devastated most royal burials, likely because its entrance became buried beneath debris and later construction. Hidden for more than 3,000 years, it remained largely intact until Howard Carter uncovered it in 1922, revealing the richest collection of royal treasures ever discovered in an Egyptian tomb. The boy king removed from the historical record eventually became the most famous pharaoh in the world. And what about the thousands of carved stone blocks Horemheb buried inside his own monuments? Egyptologists are still recovering and reconstructing them today. Protected inside those walls, the carvings survived in remarkable condition, preserving scenes from Akhenaten's reign that would otherwise have disappeared forever. In one of history's greatest ironies, the monuments built to erase Akhenaten ended up preserving his story. Horemheb didn't completely destroy the evidence. Without realizing it, he created one of the greatest archaeological archives of the Amarna period. So the campaign of historical erasure succeeded for nearly 3,000 years, right up until somebody started pulling the walls apart. Sometimes history isn't truly lost. It's simply waiting for someone to uncover it.